What up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast that lets you know each week the MMA podcast to catch, skip, and the ones you can't miss each week. We also try and check out some new shows. I am Pulver. I am back once again with my co-host Chris Madaffer. What up, dude?
Oh, I'm the sketch artist for tonight.
Yeah, right? Just sketching all that shit.
Yeah,
it sounds dirty.
We're on 48 hours now, so
evidently, yeah, something like that for sure. Let's see.
I'm doing great. I would say I'm doing great. Past my Cicerone level 1.
Oh, so, shit!
Level 1. Not technical, not like actual cert. I guess you have to go to level 2 to be certified. But
yeah,
I'm basically I could be a beer tender at a brewery.
So, how'd the level 1 test go? Is it hard?
I knew most of it. The hard part is that you have 30 minutes to answer 60 questions, and I'd say the difficult part about it. Some of the difficult ones were what kind of beer goes in this glass, or like country of origin for some of them. I knew a lot of those. Like I knew there was a question like, in what country does a Trappist beer come from, or something like that, or and I remember that had to do with monks. I'm like, Belgium, or some shit like that.
Did they throw you any tricky ones like, where are Pilsners from? Which there's like 3 answers for.
There's something like that. It's there. I know another one that says what kind is made with like a warm yeast or something like that. And I remember I had read it like in my notes because they give you a syllabus online.
Yeah,
it's like some sort of pale ale it was like an American style pale something. There's just one where I automatically knew. And then there was tricky. Yeah, some of them were pretty tricky. Like it would just show the alcohol by volume, and it would show like the color, and you just have to know what beer that is. It was multiple choice,
right?
Thank God. But I got 51 out of 60. You need to get 45 right, which is 75%. So I got 85. So not too mad at that.
Yeah, that's what's up, dude.
Yeah, so now I'm just gonna crank out the applications.
Hell yeah, that's hella tight. I wonder if I could pass that thing with like a day of studying, because I bet I'd do pretty all right on it.
I think you would.
Sweet, man. Well, let's see. Why don't we start off with our Papa Vodka presents Doug Stanhope presents Super Real Totally Not Fake sponsor this week. Do you have anything?
Yeah. This was $6.99 at good old Guinness.
Oh shit!
A little, yeah.
Is that the blonde, or do they just get real weird on the labeling?
That's just their weird. What is that? A toucan? Yeah, their toucan fucking labeling. Just a regular Guinness.
Huh. That's what's up, dude. I am this week drinking out of my. Oh god, Joey Diaz started yelling at me. I need to move that other other mouse. Anyway, I am not drinking Joey Diaz. Pause. I am drinking out of my Sweet 4 Brewers glass. Shouts out to 4 Brewers. The Pizza Port Over the Falls double IPA, which I have not had before. Pretty solid.
Yeah, I think I've tried that one before, but at their actual one of their locations or something. I remember. I can't remember the last time I was at Pizza Port and had pizza there.
Yeah, same. I love that place. I just never make it out there.
Yeah. I remember I would just look at the menu. I'm like, I'm just going to try the weirdest sounding beer. I'm like, peanut butter and jelly. This is either really good or really bad. So,
how was it?
It was pretty good.
I've had a couple peanut butter and jelly beers. They were all pretty good. Stone had a peanut butter and jelly sour. I think it was a Berliner Weiss, which sounds weird as shit, and it was, but it was real good. It tasted hella peanut buttery, though, in like a way that was kind of weird for a sour beer.
Okay. But hey, as long as it works.
Exactly. Well, like I generally say, unfortunately, we're not a beer or booze podcast, despite my best efforts. So we'll go ahead and get into topic this week and talk about the MMA podcast we think you guys should catch. So Chris, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so my catch for this week is UFC Frenemies. It was with Dan Hooker, and this time he had a guest, Brad Riddell, I believe it was, or Brad Riddell.
Nice. I didn't catch this one.
He was a former kickboxer. Oh, he's a multiple-time kickboxing champion. So I won't get into too specific details because they broke down, or no, I guess they started with a recap of 235. They kind of broke down what went on in that card. They first talked about the 236 press conference and the awkwardness of Kelvin Gastelum, and now he's like a mini Luke Rockhold. He doesn't know what to do with his hands. What?
That checks out.
Yeah, I remember he had some weird quote where he's like, "Oh, in what did he say? He's like, the fight is on a 6-year anniversary when I won the Ultimate Fighter," but just the way he said it was like, what are you trying to get at? I don't know. So, and Adesanya is just pushing everything to the side, like, sure, bud, we'll do your thing.
Yeah.
They discussed Johnny Walker, like a lot of people did this week. Now he's putting himself on the map in a very quick fashion. What is he only absorbed like 9 strikes or something ridiculous in 3 fights?
Yeah, that dude. He's fought like what, 2 or 3 minutes in his last 3 fights, if that.
Yeah. Another topic of discussion, and this will go on later in my can't miss. What is going on with Cody Garbrandt? Emotions are getting the better of him. I'll have a lot more to discuss on that in a bit. Basically, they said, have people cracked the code? Oh, no, I don't want to talk to you, Siri. Go fuck yourself. Stupid phone. Have people cracked the code?
Could be worse. Joey Diaz could have yelled at you a second ago.
Oh, yeah. That makes startle me a little bit. Oh, yeah. Dan talked about during the fight one night during one of his camps, or before the fight in the locker room, he hung out with Team Alpha Male in the locker room, and all they were doing is they were all shirtless, of course, and hyping each other up by slapping the shit out of each other and yelling at each other's faces.
That doesn't sound like the Team Alpha Male I know. Team Alpha Male I know generally, like, listens to Bach and meditates. Pretty sure.
Oh, and it's. I think they mentioned the irony of just the name of their gym, considering all those dudes are like 5'6".
Not only that, but a lot of them seem to have weird insecure stuff going on.
Yeah, that checks out. They talked about Wei Li Zhang or Zhang Wei Li. I can't remember. I know in China, I think the way you say the name, first name, I can't remember how it works. But
I know it's written backwards. I don't know if it's said backwards.
I think it's. Wait, hold on. Wait, I just heard a skip. You still there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, okay, that was weird. All of a sudden, it just showed you froze. Anyways, yeah, they asked about. They discussed her fight. They just thought she was too strong and physical for Taurus. Anyways, I'll kind of get through this real quick, and I'm just kind of rambling. Dan was very surprised that Kamaru Usman was able to out-wrestle Woodley. I think a lot of us would agree when I was watching that fight.
Yeah.
Woodley to me looked lost. Deer in the headlights looked 1,000-yard stare. Whatever you want to call it. He just didn't look like he could react.
Yeah, he kept saying it sounded like he felt like he was in a nightmare, which is, I think, something similar to what he said after the Rory fight. I think I heard Dean talking about that somewhere.
Like, real quick, do you think, I'll give all the credit in the world to Usman. He had a hell of a fight. He dominated from every round of that fight. Do you think it was also a case that Woodley just didn't show up? Because I felt like there'd be instances where we've seen Woodley fight where he at least could have kind of put something together. At least, it
didn't look like the same Woodley we'd seen in a while, but that specifically Usman's style is pretty tough on him, just matchup wise. When your game plan for the last couple handful of fights has been to essentially back to the fence over and over again, it doesn't work great against pressure fighters who aren't going to give you a break in between that pressure. Like guys like Damian Maia will try and pressure you, get a try for a takedown. If they fail, they'll back out and reset. Unlike guys like Marty.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I remember I think it was them or someone else that mentioned, it might have been Zane Simon. Woodley's kind of more used to a traditional striker, non-wrestler, and where they're afraid of Woodley's takedown threats, and he could just throw that overhand right. When in this fight, since there was a wrestler pressuring him, where were his uppercuts? We didn't see that. There's a lot of instances where Usman was not even really covering up in his guard with the striking exchanges against the fence, and he could have cracked Usman a bunch of fucking times.
Yeah, he seemed hesitant to pull the trigger for sure.
Yeah, and then lastly, they said Anthony Smith could have been the champion if he stayed down on his knees after the illegal strike from Jones. However, he decided to stick with his honor, but they still think he made a $1 million mistake potentially because he chose to get up and continue fighting. That fight was weird.
Yeah, it's a weird way that a bunch of people.
That's too much in hindsight. That's too much hindsight kind of talk.
Well, and it's also like none of you motherfuckers have evidently ever learned anything about Anthony Smith. That dude is not the kind of dude who's ever going to take a DQ win. He'd be pissed if he won by DQ. He'd be fucking pissed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he'd be Brent Primus and just kind of gloat after
Brent a win. Primus did do a little bit of that. A little bit.
Even though that wasn't technically, I mean, that was a TKO, I guess it wasn't DQ, but still.
Yeah. Brent Primus, either way, handled it, we'll say, not the classiest of ways.
Yeah. So that's what I had for my catch. Didn't have any additional ones.
Cool. So I'll jump into mine. Heavy Hands episode 253 was really solid.
That was a good one.
I actually just mentioned a bit about what I was going to bring up, but they essentially talk a lot about John's style, making it so that he can't finish people who don't take significant risks in fights, since a lot of his like creativity comes off of people trying to go for crazy shit. That's why he's really successful early, and then against guys like OSP who just refuse, or like Anthony Smith who refuse to take a fucking insane risk, the fights end up being a lot more like drawn out and methodical. They also talk a bit about Woodley's inability to adapt offensively, which was kind of an interesting point because they brought up Woodley's been very good at adapting mid-fight defensively, like against a bunch of dudes. I mean, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Damian Maia are the obvious examples because that game plan did slowly change over those fights, whereas he just was not at all able to adapt at all offensively against Marty. So
yeah. And,
also, I'm gonna start calling him Usman or Kamaru again because I feel bad. I really like Kamaru. I've been a big fan of Kamaru since he was doing commentary with John Morgan down in Titan.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. The Marty thing, it's kind of funny, or I get it as far as like the trash talk.
Yeah.
Maybe if he fights Askren, I guess you can kind of get back on that. But for now, no, he's the fucking champion. He's looking outstanding. He's only going to get better. I mean, he's going to improve his striking.
Yeah, 100%.
And by the way, is this the first time Henry Hooft has coached a champion?
No, that can't be right. No? Maybe. I don't know. It seems
Rumble,
like no, though.
Rumble lost to DC twice. Who else had a...
Rashad Henry Hoof's been working with dudes for so long.
But yeah, that's true.
I'm sure there has to be somebody. But no one stands. Well, Luke Rockhold technically is training with Henry Hoof, but he wasn't with him at the time.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. Someone had mentioned it, and I was gonna say I
could be right.
Dane Simon brought up the point about the defensive prep. That was actually a Connor Rebush. I was easy to confuse.
Yeah, definitely. Since all those shows kind of blend together a bit. Sorry if you guys can hear a fucking yapping dog. I'm gonna give it away after this show. So if anyone wants a dog, let me know. I don't even know which one it is. I know it's not Seamus. He's the good one. Yeah, it's just a good episode overall. The other thing they brought up, which we'll hear a clip about here in a bit, was Cody losing the exact same way for the third fight in a row.
Which of insanity.
100% he did. So, yeah, it's just a really solid episode.
Did you see, speaking of that fight, did you see the post-fight interview that Pedro Munoz had with TSN? It was fucking hilarious. I didn't. He's always polite, and he was just talking about his fight and why he thinks he deserves a title shot, that kind of thing. And who did he mention? Was it John Dodson? Or no, it was Marlon Moraes. They asked him, what are your opinion on Marlon Moraes and why he's getting the shot next, or he might? And he was saying all the nicest things. He was like, oh, Moraes is a very good fighter. He's a professional. He carries himself well. He'll probably get the next shot. And then all of a sudden he's like, but he could suck on my balls. He just says that just nonchalantly. It's one of the funniest. And he just keeps talking. He didn't even stop. He's like, oh, yeah. But he's like, he could suck on my balls, and just keeps talking. Well, what the fuck?
That's
like,
hilarious.
He just say that? Like, what? So
that's
I thought that was
super funny. That seems so out of character for him, too. That's super funny.
Yeah. So, of course, now that's a thing on Reddit. Suck on my balls. Of course, any sort of flare.
Yep, I was just gonna say hella flare going around. Let's see. So the only other Yeah. The only other catch I had for this week was the Care Don't Care for Wichita was really solid also. Mostly just because, actually, do you have this on yours at all?
Oh, I have if I did it. Okay.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure you don't have it deleted down on yours. So yeah, Care Don't Care Wichita was really solid. They talked a bit about 235 and Steffi, of course, brag. It's Steffi and Eugene on this episode. John Nash was away, and Steffi was, of course, bragging about how she won with most picks for the last card. Which, boy, did we not do good on picks last week, especially my drunk ass. Good God. I nailed the Macy Chasson fight, but that's about it. Anyway, so they talk about that mostly and talk about 235, and then they go through all of Eugene S. Robinson's Eugenisms, as Steffi coined them. So stuff like the different subsets of the Lost Battalion, the Pantheon of Wooden Mist, Weidman and Ioanni and Jacek being like the generals of the Mist, and the Mist is, of course, people fighters with no ability to see where they are or where they stand. So, of course, Chris Weidman keeps coming up. And I actually, if you guys check out our Twitter, TSOV Pod on Twitter, I was able to find the picture that Eugene S. Robinson came up with the phrase, like all the woodpile talk about the Mist. Because it's just Weidman standing next to a woodpile looking real lost. And then somebody else photoshopped Mist onto it. Just pretty solid. So highly recommend checking out that episode just because it's a lot of fun. They also do their picks for tomorrow's card since we're recording this Friday. And since John Nash isn't there, Eugene's taken to picking fights for John Nash. And I have a feeling John Nash's record's going to go not so well.
Yeah, and if it doesn't, he's probably going to give Eugene shit next week if he's back.
If he's back next week, hopefully. It seems like John Nash and Kid Nate they actually work well. At least I know they both actually work real jobs and have kids and shit. So unlike Eugene, who works, I guess Eugene does both have kids and
yeah, he has like a daughter or something. Right?
Yeah, but his daughter's grown as hell.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So cool, man. But yeah, that was the MMA podcast I recommend people catch this week. Why don't you kick us off with the MMA podcast you recommend people skip? And also, I should give, speaking of Eugene S. Robinson, Eugene S. Robinson style disclaimer that just because we're saying to skip your show this week doesn't mean we hate your show or that we hate you. Might even like both, but this episode was not worth the time it took to listen to it, especially in the one I'm going to bring up, because god damn it, your fucking network is ruining your show by allowing so many ads, mister. We'll get to that in a minute.
So, I have two skips. One of which was UFC Unfiltered, the one with Johnny Walker. Not because of Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is hilarious. He reminds me of Silva in a way. I don't know if it's because he's kind of soft-spoken like Silva. Maybe it's the charisma, but that dude is very marketable, and it helps that he fucking murders people in the octagon.
He murders people in the octagon and then strips everywhere he goes. So yeah, that counts as marketable as far as I can tell.
I still think that's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Like someone walking out to the octagon, just because of the cut man's reaction, like what the fuck is going on right now?
Yeah, with the tearaway pants and shit. Jesus.
Yeah, Johnny Walker, they were asking, of course, who would you like to fight next? He's just the kind of guy, it doesn't matter to me right now. I just want to keep fighting as many fights as I can throughout a year. So he's like cowboy at light heavyweight, which is great. It's not saying you can get away with knocking people out in under a minute in every fight and keep getting fights. I mean, that helps, clearly, because you're not taking any damage. He said he would love to fight
except for when you try and do the worm after you win.
Yeah. It almost looked like he was doing the Yoel Romero Soldier of God transition into the worm and then just brutally fucked up his shoulder or his arm. He would love to fight the winner of Reyes and Volkan. But he says he admits he feels he needs 2 to 3 more fights before getting a title shot because he knows he still has work to do. So that's nice.
Well, and he just saw John Jones, and he's like, how about I fight one of the two guys who that if you last more than a couple minutes, my odds go way up.
Yeah. So anyways, the reason why I skip is because Matt Serra was pretty unbearable this episode. I know he's pretty goofy. For some reason,
yelling about how loud he comes again, because that's been a recurring theme lately.
It wasn't. I don't know what the fuck. Oh, it was with how much he's in love with Derek Lewis, and he was just really loud. It was just annoying. I don't know. I was like, dude, I can't listen to this shit. It was just really, really goofy. I was like, I like Matt Serra a lot. I was like, holy shit, I've had enough. So that brings to, and I know this is one of your skips or your skip. You're welcome. Because holy fuck.
The fucking ads, dude. It's ridiculous. Yeah. It's so many. Which one? Yeah. Did you listen to the Askren one?
Yeah.
Dude, it got really unbearable. And they're all the same fucking ads over and over again.
Yeah, I couldn't stand it. I was like, dude, this is fucking stupid.
Which sucks because the reason I especially have it as a skip is the conversation with Askren, the talk about Krokop retiring, the talk about the 170 division, and like Askren doing podcasts from the NCAA finals, a bunch of wrestling talk. Like, yeah, it was a good episode. He just fucking ruined it with the shitty Podcast One ads. And I can't wait for when he has some fucking like Sammy Phillips or somebody on next week, because Podcast One seems to, as of late, be pushing getting other Podcast One people as guests. Because I just saw that happen on Zane Lamprey's show, Zane's World, which, I mean, that one actually worked out well because the guest works well for his show format. But notice Adam Carolla is also getting other shitty Podcast One guests forced on him, or at least people that I just have no fucking interest in hearing from. So it's frustrating. And Podcast One, if you guys, I bring this up every once in a while, Podcast One, the reason why you hear so many ads is because it's run by Westwood One, which is just a fucking radio station. So that's why they slam so many fucking ads into everything. It's also why networks are garbage and there's no reason to join them unless it's something like All Things Comedy, where it's just a collective where no one actually makes any goddamn money off of it, and Bill Burr just finances everything with Al Madrigal.
Yeah, it's all good points that you brought up, and
it's just fucking nuts.
Yeah, I was like, dude, this is stupid. Like, and generally speaking, his podcast is usually already like 45 to 50 minutes long.
Well, and like
10 minutes of ads.
Exactly. More than that. I mean, it's getting to the point where I think what he's doing is he's recording an hour to an hour and a half of content a week. They're splitting them up into 3 different episodes, but they can't have fucking 20-minute episodes. So they just slam 20 minutes of ads, or 15, 20 minutes of ads into it. And then they can slam a bumper on the front and the back and fill in just enough time. But it's fucking terrible format. And it's not, to be fair to Podcast One, there are other podcasts that don't have nearly that many ads. The ads are all unique, and they're not, it's not like slamming, like it's not completely stopping all the momentum of the episode. But I think that's another bad part of it, is it just fucking gets jammed into the end of a conversation, and they don't like, there's no lead in or lead out to any ad. So
yeah, it just
fucking
kind of
kills me.
It's just, he's talking about disc golf, and all of a sudden, you know, do you need a shave or blah blah blah? I was like, wait, what? I just, I don't know. We're like, oh, okay.
To TrueCar, the #1 place to fucking hear terrible ads.
Bet DSI something. I don't fucking know, dude. It's yeah. All right, where were we? So those are my skips.
Yeah, that was, so we had the same skip, so that made that easy. So why don't we move on then to the podcast you recommend people can't miss this week? That's MMA related.
So mine is TSN MMA show episode 78. Bazooka Joe was not in. It was just Aaron Bronstetter.
I'm glad you mentioned this because I actually didn't have time to listen to it, but I really wanted to.
So I'll go through the more important things. He just kind of rattles off. Jones looked wonderful, yada, yada, yada. Usman dominated Woodley. Holy shit, big surprise. Colby is next for Usman. Aaron mentioned he interviewed Colby, and he said, what did he say? Oh, Dana told Colby after the fight, really, please go do interviews right now because you're next for the shot. I know someone that has a picture online. I think it was someone from MMA Fighting. It might have been Esther Lindbergh. Shows Dana and Colby kind of conversing in the crowd after the fight. So yeah, clearly
they were talking during the fight. I think I heard that Dana with like 2 or 3 minutes left on the fight actually went over and started talking.
Dana's just telling him like, you're gonna be the villain, and clearly Colby knows it, even though he's terrible at it.
Well, fucking Dana doesn't see him as a villain, if you know anything about Dana.
Wow, that's true, right?
This fucking bright red face at the goddamn Harley Davidson rally.
So, by the way, before I get into this, did you see the video? Did you see the video of your boy Ali fucking swinging on Colby in the Palms Hotel?
You mean swinging on Colby's clearly turned around and scared friend? And then like pretending to swing at Colby from like 4 feet away and then like
there was that. I couldn't tell who the fuck else was with Colby. That was just so goofy. And then I don't know. Ali is just something else. That dude doesn't surprise me.
No, I mean that motherfucker is.
He thinks he's
the
a fighter.
worst person for the sport. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
He just challenged fucking not Chaz Skelly, Bryce Mitchell to a fucking grappling competition like an asshole because he said, we'll fist fight. And he's like, UFC's not calling me to fucking fist fight you, bro.
By the way, just go to like one of Usman's posts. I think it was him with Ali and just all the comments. Bro, you're a great guy, but you can't be with that fucking rat or that piece of shit on your left. You know, it's like, you should listen to what other people are saying. I get it. He's a
bad dude.
He's a great manager, but
no, he's not. He's only a great manager because he's doing a bunch of illegal shit.
I know. That's the joke.
I mean,
it's because that's the only defense he will come up with. They go, "Oh, he's a great manager," you know.
He is a great manager if he can make money off of you, and even then, he's probably stealing money from you based on a lot of accounts of former fighters that worked with him.
So, anyways, you know who that reminds me of? According to one of the guests on TSMMA, Justin Buchholz reminds me of someone named Uriah Faber, who also kind of basically makes money off of you. According to Justin, he has a huge fucking ego. So he was saying, so they asked him, okay, so what do you think of Cody's performance? He said, first off, the corner advice was absolutely terrible. He said Danny Castillo was giving foolish advice. Instead of saying, don't trade rights, because you could see Castillo yelling that, say, cover up left. Instead of saying, get out of there, say, move your feet. Buchholz, his biggest inspiration, he said, as far as which coach he models his game after, or when he was coaching, was Duke Roufus. He had nothing but praise for Roufus and Woodley's corner during that fight. He knew Woodley was being dominated, but he was saying, like, they're giving him so much good adversity right now. You know, that's the kind of corner you need.
Yeah.
You can't have someone just yelling vanilla shit at you.
Well, and you can't yell at someone what not to do, because that's all they're going to keep hearing. And if they do hear you, that's all they'll do.
Aaron asked him, how was the parting of ways with your time at Team Alpha Male? And he's like, oh, it was very less than amicable. He's like, I was only there for about 10 years. You know, he's just basically saying, fuck that place. Fuck Uriah. He didn't say fuck Uriah Faber, but didn't have kind words about Uriah Faber. Aaron asked him, okay, how's your relationship with TJ Dillashaw? And if TJ reached out to you, would you help him? He's like, 100%. He said, TJ's actually been nothing but respectful for the past 10 years. Even when TJ left, he reached out to him multiple times. So
yeah, and I think he's so cool with guys like Joey Wan and a couple others too.
Yeah, I believe he mentioned him. But yeah, he just said Uriah Faber at one point almost had to sell the gym. This was before Buchholz took over as a head coach. He just said Uriah Faber's ego is way too big, and he's a detriment to the gym and fighters. He said what also pissed him off is when he heard that Chad Mendes was retiring, considering that apparently Chad Mendes never actually said that out of his own mouth. Apparently someone leaked that, and Chad Mendes has still, to this day, not said, I am retired. Apparently he hasn't said that, like, at all.
Interesting. Wonder what that could be. A lot of things. Yeah,
but he said he discussed Cruz's commentary, and he said Cruz was confused during the fight as to how could, you know, he said he knew Cruz was thinking, how the fuck did Cody look this good against me? He's like, dude, that's because we've seen, you know, like 27 rounds against you. You know, it's just a matter of time. Like we just knew how to fight you. It's just an instance now where there's no real head coach at Team Alpha Male. And I'll ask you this. So if you're Cody Garbrandt, and look, we know he's going to stay at Alpha Male.
He's not going anywhere else. There's no way.
However, where would you like to see him go?
That's a tough one. Maybe Duke Roufus. Actually, probably ATT.
Those would be I'd say Rufus Sport, ATT, AKA would be. I mean, he'd stay in California.
There's not a lot of dudes his size at. Well,
that's
Pico and him aren't that far apart. Pico's what, 55, 45?
He's a
both. I think
he's a 40. He's both actually. Yeah, he's an inch taller.
Yeah, so like that'd be
like maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is there isn't a ton of dudes. Whereas if you went to somewhere like ATT or to Rufus's gym, there's a ton of dudes. And I think though both of those places, ATT be good to get him to actually use his goddamn wrestling game. But who knows? He might just be fucking Justin Gaethje, which is totally possible. Or Rufus, I feel like would be able to get him some like better mental game type shit going on.
Because I even read an article. They were suggesting Cody Garbrandt should go to flyweight at this point because they're not done with that division yet. Maybe he can kind of save it.
That's a terrible fucking plan.
We saw what happened to TJ's chin. What the fuck do you think is going to happen to Cody's glass chin?
That's the thing is Cody's chin is not going to get better if he drops 10 pounds.
No, that'd be a terrible decision on his part. I mean, what was Munoz ranked, like 9? So at this point, they're going to give Cody like someone who's 12 or some shit, or they're just going to give him a wrestler. But then again, Munoz wasn't known for knocking people out anyway. So look, and I feel like
but Munoz throws fucking heaters. He always has.
He does. Yeah.
That fight was always going to be a brawl. It was whether or not Cody was going to get it, like pick his spots or not. And instead, he decided to literally throw fucking 2 threes for a minute and a half straight.
And by the way, shouts out to the absolute chin on Pedro Munoz. Like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the other thing is going into that, you had to think like Pedro Munoz has the better chin of the two for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because that dude not only throws heaters, but he's been clubbed with some shit even prior to the Cody fight. And he's walked through a lot of it, not even like blinking it off.
So that's what I had for my can't miss. I wanted to talk about the whole Cody Garbrandt fight. I felt like that was definitely one of those fights on that main card that a lot of people, if you look at the whole card, which fight, I guess you could say surprised you the most, barring the Woodley-Usman fight, because I'm sure that pick for biggest surprise.
Yeah, I never thought, I never in a million years would have thought Woodley-Usman would have gone like that. I mean, good God.
That. Yeah. So anyways, we'll get back to it. How about you? What is your can't miss? Or I don't know if you have multiple or.
So I have one can't miss this week, and it caught me off guard. I think they just recently, I think sometime this week they released it. It's the Coast to Coast MMA Coast to Coast MMA Hour, Coast to Coast MMA podcast. Coast to Coast. What the fuck do they actually call themselves? Here, let me pull this up while I talk about it so I could actually get their goddamn name right. Because Combat Hour. Thank you. Fucking took me a second. My autofill on the URL helped me. Yeah, Coast to Coast Combat Hour, which is the show hosted by Ed Carbazal and Matt Hawkins from the MMA community. Super nice guys. Matt Hawkins is actually the one who's here local and regularly covers stuff like the Epic cards down at the Sheridan. Right. I think it's 4 Point Sheridan.
The 4 Point Sheridan.
Yeah, so they actually had Wonder Boy on this week, and it's a fucking awesome episode. It's a nice, like, tight 35-40 minutes, but it's just fucking fantastic. It's one of the best interviews I've heard with Wonder Boy in general. He's super charismatic, and they have a lot of fun. I can't recommend it highly enough. I think people sleep on this show anyway, but especially this is just one of the best interviews I've heard with Wonder Boy. They talk a lot about the fallout from 235 and the changes in the welterweight division, since there was a ton on that card. And they get into more technical talk as well. Stuff like how Wonder Boy's been working on countering less and trying to lead more, and not being as reactive, which is interesting and very cool to hear, because I think that means his fight against Anthony Pettis is going to be a fucking... It's going to be wild. Yeah. There's going to be some shit going down in that fight.
He'll let his hands go.
That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he's specifically training and focusing on being more offensive and less reactive.
I feel like his decent knockout power in his hands. I know he knocked out Bobby Knuckles. Granted, that was years ago.
Yeah.
Still.
I mean, yeah, he's he's fucked up a lot of people. What he did to Johnny Hendricks, like, good God. But
that's right.
A lot of that stuff, though, he said specifically after the Woodley fights that he realized I can't be reactive and just be waiting on dudes, because when I was being forced to lead, I was completely shut down, essentially. So it's cool to hear him working on that. He also talks about him and his dad are moving their gym into a bigger facility, and like growing up with doing karate and how it's kind of devalued since there's a bunch of shitty black belts that got their black belt in like 3 months and then went and opened terrible schools.
That's a shame when that happens.
Yeah. And then they talked about a bunch of cool stuff. They talked a lot about growing up like as their whole family watching fights together and going to UFC 3 live, which is cool as hell.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they also talk a bit about how he used to fight for Chuck Norris in that kickboxing league, and knowing Chuck Norris through Carlos Machado.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and through Weidman and all them too. And
I forgot, wasn't Chuck Norris like actually doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? I know
he's a black belt under Carlos Machado.
Yeah, actually. I know the guy has legit like mixed martial arts skills. I know it's mostly because he was a fucking like, martial arts star, like a Bruce Lee. That's whatever the whole jokes bullshit thing. No, like the guy is a legit martial artist. I mean, well,
yeah, and he ended up training. I hope it's Carlos Machado. I hope I didn't write that down wrong. I mixed up the fucking lineage so bad. I'm already so bad with names, and they all have such similar names, so I could be butchering that. But yeah, they actually get into it a bit and kind of Chuck Norris's actual fighting background and martial arts background. It's really cool to hear. And also Stephen Wonderboy Thompson talks a bit about what you guys heard on the intro, his love of movies like Best of the Best, and he also talked about Kickboxer and Bloodsport, and how he's a big movie buff. So it was just very cool to hear not only him open up about where he's at and what he's working on for the 170 division, the Anthony Pettis fight, but also stuff like the fact that he went to UFC 3 and used to watch the fights with his dad and his sister, and is a big movie buff, and Chuck Norris stories. Like I haven't heard any of that shit from Wonderboy on any other show, so
that's cool.
highly recommend it. It's a really great episode, and Matt and Ed really made it a lot of fun. And Wonderboy said he wants to be back on after the fight, so hopefully they make that happen, because that'd be great.
Hell yeah, man! I'd be looking forward to that as well. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah. Well, like we always say, link in the description. We'll have or in the show notes. We'll have all the info for where you can find that. Cool, man. We'll keep on moving on. Did you have any new shows that you listened to this week?
Yeah. So this is the show published by obviously Fight Talk. I believe it was their first episode of this new show. I'm pretty sure they mentioned it was new, unless I was a little high. It's called A Few Good Fights. Like I said, published by obviously Fight Talk. Unfortunately I didn't write their names down.
That's right. They just changed their name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe they just changed their name because we were tweeting about it, but I totally forgot that they did that, and it hasn't been showing up anywhere.
Should have written their fucking names down. But anyways, so they kind of discussed immediately who can really challenge John Jones. There's nobody right now at 205 that can. This is why some of us want John Jones to move up. I mean, we want to see him move up in general, because I feel like when people move up in weight, they kind of get stronger and more powerful. And who doesn't want to see John Jones at heavyweight at this point? There's a lot of fun matchups there for him. He's a huge guy already. And he could take all the picograms he can want, so he can get real nice and big.
Looks like their names are, if I remember right, Sean, Noel, and Young Sean, Noel, and Rob.
I think that's what it is.
I believe so. Yeah, because I know Noel and I want to say Rob was the other one. Were the hosts of obviously Fight Talk, which I love. Obviously Fight Talk. So yeah, if you could fight. Man, I'm excited to check that out, Sam.
So, yeah, I only had a couple notes on this, but they said, yeah, right now at 205, it's just Thiago Santos, who I believe is getting the next title shot. I don't know if Dana White's gone out and said anything about that. I mean, we'll see. I know Jones doesn't give a shit. I don't think he really took too much damage. That dude probably wants to fight. I imagine he wants to fight July, maybe International Fight Week.
Yeah, I know you got to imagine he wants on that card if he can.
Like, he'll be the main card, and co-main's gonna be what, like Connor and Cowboy or some shit. If that thing's happening, I don't know anything about that.
Nope, because Joe Rogan said this week Connor doesn't want to be co-main.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's only a main event kind of guy. That's right.
Well, not only that, the reason why is because he said publicly he doesn't want to be on a card with another title fight because he has to share pay-per-view revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't know how that works. I guess he would get 8% of, like, I don't understand how that would affect. To be fair, none of us fucking know because nobody knows what the contracts look like. But it's weird that would affect his pay-per-view percentage, because you would think a pay-per-view percentage is just going to be a percentage of the pay-per-view regardless of how many title fights they have on it. But maybe it's like a percentage of the, like, excess money, and Connor thinks he's going to make most of the excess money anyway. So something like that. It's all fucking weird. And who knows if that dude's even fighting again. I don't know. Cowboy said at one point that Connor just stopped communications. So
yeah, that dude doesn't surprise me anymore.
No, especially with some of that allegations.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I like seeing him when he's the octagon. Other than that, pay zero attention to any of the shit outside of it. Yeah, but these other notes from these guys' new show, they talk about Woodley's 1,000-yard stare. Why did he look so lost? They discuss how Usman is able to dominate him. They had a quick note on how Ali Abdelaziz is a piece of shit. They think Ali is a giant pussy because he tries to throw punches at UFC fighters who would murder him.
And at their friends who are facing the opposite direction.
Yeah. They thought Robbie Lawler was out for a split second. I think a lot of us did.
Yeah, I did live. I was actually talking to Judo Bill about this on on the MMA community, but man, watching that live, I was like, "Oh shit, Herb, stop that!" And then you watch the replay, and you're like, "Oh shit, that still looked like he went out." And then you see the replay with the thumbs up.
I'm still convinced he was out, at least even if it was for a little bit,
partially at least, or going out anyway. Like he was about to get Ashley Evans Smith, but
I'm still convinced he would have gotten subbed. There's like a minute and a half left.
Yeah. And Askren,
I don't care what anyone says.
Askren, hold on to a
friend of mine that had over. He had no idea who Ben Askren was, and it was great. He said, "This guy looks like just some fucking dude, some regular gumpy ass motherfucker." And after the fight, I sent him that video of Askren crushing the watermelon. So, holy shit! I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what he was trying to do to Lawler's head.
A little bit.
So, and then lastly, they said Zabit is everything as advertised to an extent. For now, maybe he has to work on his cardio or some shit. I can't remember what the fuck they were saying, but because it was just a 3-round fight. But that I still don't understand how that guy makes 145, but whatever.
Hey man, let him keep doing it as long as he can do it.
And I just saw. Did you see who they're trying to book him against now? Brian Ortega. Evidently is going to be fighting him in July.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah. But the only problem is it's shortly after Ramadan. But then they were mentioning something in the article that apparently Zabit isn't too strict on Ramadan compared to a bunch of other fighters from that area. So I don't know. I mean,
interesting. Yeah, well, I mean, some people train through Ramadan too. Like Bilal Muhammad trained through Ramadan a couple times. He just works out at night and sleeps during the day.
Yeah, he's mentioned that. Pardon the noise. I'm just cracking open another frosty beverage here real quick.
I'm about to do the same here in a second. But yeah, man, that sounds like a really good episode. I'm going to have to go check them out because I love the obviously Fight Talk guys, and I'm excited to hear what their new show actually ends up looking like.
Yeah, solid episode overall.
Sweet. So I have a new show. I'm just going to talk about it very briefly because it turned out to barely be about MMA, which I should have known. I should have known knowing it was these dudes. But the show is hosted by Alex, a.k.a. Just Bleed MMA on Twitter, and Richard, a.k.a. Drunkass Uncle Bobby, a.k.a. Fukalo from Twitter. And it's a great show, but if you get offended by literally anything, like if you have touchy subjects, don't listen to it. There's just all kinds of swearing and fucked up jokes, all kinds of words you probably shouldn't say in public. Not that everyone doesn't, or that they aren't used hilariously in certain situations, but good googly moogly. As someone who does not have delicate sensibilities, there was parts of it where I was like, wow, I probably wouldn't have said that on a show. So they have no filter, and it's real fucking fun, but real hectic. And then on top of that, it's a lot of WWE talk this episode, actually. A lot of King Kong Bundy dying talk. They talk about Michael Jackson and R. Kelly a bit. Talk about more WWE stuff. Let's see. They do a tweet of the week, which was a video someone put together of Michael Jackson dancing to Remix to Ignition, which is fucked up. And then they talk a bit about comedy and going comedy shows and picks for UFC Wichita. Again, if there was, I don't ever put trigger warnings on things. I think you can probably be adults about stuff, but this shit needs all the trigger warnings. This shit should be called trigger warning. It is. They say some shit during that. So, yeah, Just Bleed MMA episode 219. It's funny, but it's fucked up. Let's just put it this way. At one point, you see now System of a Down has the new band that without the lead singer.
Do you mean, well, which one? Are they called Scars on Broadway?
Yes.
So that band's been around for 10 years.
Right. They described it as getting a dry jack from System of a Down.
Okay.
Or an over the pants handy. This is what going to see that band felt like. So that's the kind of content.
Yeah, I mean, I see what they're saying, because that the second singer, what's his name, like Darren, like I remember when System of a Down broke up for the first time. It was like three years later, 2008. That's the Scars on Broadway showed up, and I was like, yeah, I like maybe 2 or 3 songs, and it's kind of has that similar feel, but I don't know. It's just it's kind of like when and there was another fucking band that infamously had a second band. I can't remember. I'll have to think about it later during maybe our second segment or some shit. But ended up. I know Blink-182 has had like 4 or 5 different. Oh yeah, they're one of them too. Yeah, there was when it was like Plus 44 with Mark Hoppus and Travis Barker, and like another one like Boxcar Racer. I don't fucking know. Bands.
Boxcar Racer with Lars Fredrickson.
Yeah. So.
Or Lars Fredrickson and the Bastards, or
yep.
Fucking Op Ivy's had like fucking 5 different bands come from that.
Exactly. Anything with Tim Armstrong.
Yeah. Man, I love me some Op Ivy. I fucking love Op Ivy. I even still fuck with early Rancid. I have terrible taste sometimes, y'all.
As do I.
Anyway, way off topic, but yeah, it's a fun show. It's a fucked up show. That, by the way, that example of the dry jacking was like the least fucked up joke that I would feel cool repeating. So there's just some crazy jokes. It's all in good fun. Clearly, like they're talking shit, but they clearly mean it half tongue in cheek, half just saying it to say it kind of shit, which I appreciate. And they're clearly fans of dudes like. As a matter of fact, they do a reference to. Here's another great joke that they reference, which is Christina Pajitsky's joke she made on Your Mom's House about Bert Kreischer. Since he has the fat belly and the skinny legs, he looks like an Ethiopian kid.
Oh, I remember that. That was fucked up.
Shit like that. It's a lot of those kinds of references. So it's very hectic. They say horrible things. There's some great R. Kelly jokes. But yeah, a lot of WWE talk though. So if that bothers you, probably not your thing. By
the way, I had to go back and I watched that very well-known episode of the Boondocks with R. Kelly. I had to do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
God, the Boondocks is so fucking underrated.
Yeah, rest in peace to Adam West. I know he passed away a couple years ago, but he has
no way.
Well, I remember he had a fantastic cameo in that he played the defense lawyer to R. Kelly in that.
That's right. I forgot Adam West even died.
I know, yeah, that shit was crazy.
Then again, I forgot he was still alive this long, so it's like one of those ones.
Yeah.
It's like Regis Philbin, to be topical.
Wait, isn't he still? I don't know. See, I thought he was dead too. I think he's actually alive.
This is my point, and I think that's the host of Jeopardy, right?
That's Trebek.
Damn it, that's who I was trying to reference.
We just found out he has like fucking stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
I know, that was the joke I was trying to make. So
oh god.
Speaking of, actually, that's another reference to that podcast. So yeah, like I said,
I don't think I remember Trebek saying, "Who wants to be a millionaire?"
Good point. Good point. He always said, "Who wants to be jeopardized?" No, that's not what he said. Was that not the catchphrase? I could have sworn.
Turd Ferguson. It's a funny name.
Anyway, why don't we keep on moving on? Do you have any well-rounded podcasts or podcasts that are not MMA related, kind of podcasts for the well-rounded fight fan, to give a nod to the Co-Main Event podcast?
Bill Burr, of course. I listened to some of what he had to say, but then he talked a lot about R. Kelly and shit like that.
Yeah, he'll do that.
I'm glad in the way he talked about R. Kelly, like, how come we're just now finding out this guy is a pedophile monster piece of shit?
Oh, just now? What? How? Where the fuck is Bill Burr?
Or he should have now in the limelight, like in public.
Yeah, because that shit's been known since Aaliyah, dog.
Yeah, Aaliyah. No, yeah, and like was it 95 or something?
Yeah, shit? Exactly. Like R. Kelly's never not been a trash person, even if Remix to Ignition is a really fun song.
It's like that's like everyone's like thing. I feel like that's like the running joke. Like R. Kelly's a piece of shit, but Ignition,
It's real fucking good, dude. I think I even had that album when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I would have been like, I was in like 6th grade. All right, he was probably banging people I knew.
Yeah, and unfortunately, given that timeline, you're probably fucking right.
Probably not wrong. Anyway, let's keep on moving on. Is there any other podcasts that you listened to this week you wanted to shout out that aren't MMA related?
Unfortunately, not. I have a shitload more notes to another MMA podcast. It's one of the busiest weeks I had listened to MMA podcasts, which is kind of hilarious.
That's funny, since there wasn't a ton of shows that actually came out this week, I feel like.
Yeah, I kept the notes to a minimum because a lot that was said on one show was said on another.
Yeah, a lot of 235 talk across the board. So some well-rounded shows. Since the first half of this week, I didn't listen to any MMA podcasts. All the way through Mardi Gras and into the day after, I mostly, only listened to Beyond Bourbon Street and the Cigar Authority. That was pretty much it.
By the way, how many hangovers have you had this week?
Less than you would expect, but it's because I keep getting drunk and falling asleep early.
No, okay.
That tends to be how it's been going, where I got hammered as fuck since I started. I've had the whole week off, so I would start drinking at like 11 a.m., which means it's hard to get a hangover because by the time it comes around to like 9, you're already so fucking hammered and have had you've been sober and drunk 3 times already by that point.
Did you appreciate how hammered I was on Saturday, sending you that was it photo of me and Brittany or something like that?
Oh yeah, that was really great. I love me some Brittany Crest. She's the best.
That was like
she's a shit show. Yep.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
Oh, dude, it has to be 4 a.m. if Brittany's hanging out. That or you're at Blarney.
Yeah, no, we had it was after Nick's show, his going away show.
Oh, that'll do it.
And of course, like a late night house party for him.
That's funny. So. Yeah, she's a sweetheart. I've known her since 9th grade, probably.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, because I didn't really talk to her honestly too much, really, except for maybe at Blarney. So it was nice catching up with her, seeing a bunch of other people I hadn't seen in a while. It was a fun weekend. So
nice. So yeah, like I said, I mostly only listen to Beyond Bourbon Street, which is the cool podcast about New Orleans and fun shit to do there. They just did a big thing about Rex King of Carnival, which is the main parade and crew that's been running for Jesus, I don't know, 150 plus years, something like that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that post you sent me, by the way.
Yeah, it's cool, right?
On Instagram. Yeah, with kind of description of all the floats.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's cool hearing all that shit and oh my God, we could do this whole podcast about that. So I'm just going to keep on moving on. But I love me some goddamn New Orleans culture. The Cigar Authority, with fucking Robert Kelly, fucking Bobby Kelly, dude. He was on there. Fucking hella Boston. It's a bunch of dudes from Massachusetts who are all at least in their 40s or 50s that work for Well, one dude runs like one of the longest run online retailers of cigars. It's just great cigar talk. Bobby Kelly, the comedian, fucking Bobby Kelly, dude. Bill Burr's friend was on there.
Yeah, Bill Burr. He said the only R. Kelly that's a good guy is Bobby Kelly.
Exactly. Fucking Robert Kelly.
Yeah,
she likes his fucking Connecticut shades. You know what I'm talking about, the fucking rappers. Fucking Bobby Kelly. It's great. They all have hella thick accents. They're all either from Massachusetts, New York, or New Hampshire.
There's New England or New York.
Basically. Yeah, that whole area all kind of sounds the same to me as someone from fucking Southern California. But then again, my dad's from Jersey, so what the fuck do I know? So yeah, it's just great podcast. If you're at all interested in cigars, I highly recommend that. Drink TV. Drink TV is the new network that has Zane Lamprey's show. So if you guys ever watch Three Sheets or Drinking Made Easy or Chug, which if you haven't watched any of those, we can't be friends. They're fucking incredible. But Drink TV is where they host his new show, Four Sheets, as well as the show Between the Sheets, which is the one hosted by his buddy Steve McKenna. It's fucking great. So basically, picture if Anthony Bourdain's show was all about booze, and he just brought his severe drunk friend along with him everywhere that has a giant beard and drinks way too heavily. It's fucking great. It's a lot of fun. So they added those to Drink TV, which I think is $3 a month, and Drink TV is finally launched, so it's official. Drink TV is essentially, think for Drink TV Netflix, but for all booze programming. So stuff like drunk trivia shows hosted by, I forget chick's name, but she's super funny. You would recognize her. All of the it's also owned by the Brewdog Network. So all the guys who run Brewdog that have been doing their TV shows forever, they're on there. They have all the old episodes of Drinking Made Easy and HD on there. So they have a couple different San Diego episodes. They've got essentially Drinking Made Easy took place in a different city in each area, whereas Four Sheets is travel shows to different countries. I think the first, countries or cities. I think the first one is to Machu Picchu and that whole area. And the second episode is to, or Cusco, I think is where Machu Picchu is, if I remember right. And then the second episode was in the Keys, I want to say, or somewhere like that.
Like Florida Keys or some shit?
I don't know if it was actually the Keys. It was somewhere like the Keys. I can't remember.
Like St. Augustine or some shit?
No, it might actually be the Keys. It's some beach, super rich beachy Florida area. Probably the Keys. The problem is he's done different parts on every one of his shows, and all of his shows are very similar themed, so it kind of blends together a bit in my head, but super fun, and I highly recommend that. You can get it on Roku or Amazon Fire Stick, or just go to their website, all that shit. And then the only other one I wanted to shout out was Hot Boxing, which is Mike Tyson's podcast, episode 15.
I was going to say, was that the one with Joey Diaz?
It sure was, which is what you guys heard for half a second because I accidentally hit the wrong mouse. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. It's just them telling old, insane New York stories where they're talking about fucking rolling dudes who are trying to buy hookers and doing hella drugs, how coke was crazy in the 80s, being in jail, early 80s New York. It's fucking chaos. So
yeah, I gotta check that out.
And they're both smoking hella weed the whole time, so 100% give that a listen.
Definitely will give that a listen.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Is there any specific podcasts you wanted to shout out this week that we didn't get to on the regular formatted stuff? Any honorable mentions?
If I did, it's definitely an honorable mention. They talk a lot about Colby Crappington.
Yeah.
Nash says he's a fan of Colby, ironically, because he's so bad at his acting and insists on continuing doing so. Eugene says Colby is like Barbecue Becky. Maybe they can hype the fight by filming Colby following Usman around and calling the cops constantly on him.
That was one of the funniest fucking things I heard all week. I think Nash actually was the one that... it was Alexi.
It was Alexi who said that. Yeah.
Alexi was like, "Oh my god, he's actually living the gimmick. He needs to just follow Usman around and call the cops every time he tries to do anything," which is super fucking funny and clever.
And then Eugene says Cody Garbrandt is now higher ranked on the last battalion than Jeremy Stevens. So that's my honorable mention.
Cody is coming for a top spot in that brigade for sure, despite JJ's and Chris Weidman's best efforts.
Exactly. And I just realized something today, seeing that Jacare and Romero 2 is happening. You know what that means for Chris Weidman?
Nothing good.
Paulo Costa.
Well, you know what that actually means. Probably means Paulo Costa is still dealing with USADA issues because
I did read someone mention that too. Like, well, why do you think
they don't announce USADA issues anymore? And that fight's been moved like 3 or 4 times now. And if it's not like everyone in the world isn't skeptical about whether or not that dude is using shit.
I'm just gonna start calling him OJ.
Oh, because he got that juice.
Yeah.
You saying he's a Chance the Rapper single?
You can call it that, but I just think it's funny. He's just OJ every time I see him.
He got the juice.
What did Chael say about John Jones? He said, I was on all the TRTs. Like, that makes John Jones a box of Tropicana or some shit like that when I fought him.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there any other ones you want to shout out other than If I Did It?
No, that was it for me.
Cool. Yeah, I think the only ones for me were co-main event episode 344 was pretty good. A lot of I think they opened talking about if either one of them had ever had a beef so bad that they wanted to fight in a buffet line. And they also talk a lot about John Jones being a leader in Dendasso with the fucking 2 illegal shots to Anthony Smith in that fight. Let's see. The MMA Vivisection for UFC Wichita was really fucking good. They both had some really good points, and they talk about how hopefully this card's going to be super fast paced since it is all on ESPN Plus. So that's something to look forward to for sure, hopefully. Protect Your Neck episode 117 was solid. Dan Tom's just hanging out. He talks very briefly about UFC 235 and then goes into his breakdown of this weekend's card in Wichita. He also does some ridiculous ass impressions like Blugloy Evenwolf and goes way off the fucking rails, but it's very funny. MMA by the Numbers for UFC Wichita was really good. If you guys have not checked out that podcast, I highly recommend it. UFC by the Numbers is a guy, or MMA rather, by the Numbers, is a guy who goes through and does a deep stats breakdown on each of the fights. He also does a DraftKings episode as well for every card. So if you guys are interested in kind of DraftKings, or if you're interested in hearing the stats and the odds and how he thinks those two things line up for each week, I highly recommend checking it out. It's just extremely informative, and you hear stuff that I rarely look at stats, but there are some things you can take from stats that are really interesting factors in fights. And it's always cool to hear that broken down so succinctly by dude. And then MMA Roadshow episode 206 is fun since John Morgan is hanging out drinking growlers from Latchkey Brewing down here in San Diego.
That's right.
Since they sent him a whole bunch and they sponsored the show for that episode. So he's hanging out drinking a bunch of those. I believe it's down in the old where Mission Brewery is, like when you're driving down the 5 and you're entering downtown, you know how Mission's
like
on the right?
Petco, right?
Yeah. Kinda. Like on the way to Petco. Because it's like the old brick like center that where
it's right by the trolley station right next to Petco. It's that trolley
it's like a couple blocks up.
Yeah,
but it's cool hearing that. He also did interviews with Shoeface, Derek Lewis, JDS, and Rothwell. So it was just a solid episode, but nothing. It was a lot of interviews, to be honest. So, but anytime you shout out a San Diego brewery who's supposed to be dope, I'm about that.
Yeah, you get our attention for sure.
Yeah. I think the guy from Latchkey is from like somewhere else. Also, I want to say maybe Pizza Port or something, or Ballast Point is actually where he's from. So, I'm really interested to go check out their shit. Maybe we'll have to do a fucking field trip out there and watch a card with them or something.
That'd be fun. I'm down.
Cool, man. Well, we will go ahead and wrap this segment here. If you guys are listening to the podcast version of this, you will get to hear the clip of Connor Rebush and Phil McKenzie talking about how they gave the 2018 award to Cody Garbrandt for something hilarious. And if you're not listening to that, then you guys can check that out on the podcast feed. But for everybody watching on video, we will end this one, and we'll be back here in about 10-ish minutes to break down our picks for UFC Wichita, UFC on ESPN +4, Lewis versus Ngannou. These names are getting fucking ridiculous. Wait, not Ngannou. Jesus Christ, we're not watching that again. Lewis versus Dos Santos. All right, we'll be back.